to be driven down a lot. Well, this cave was first found back in August of 1875 by a man named Jacob Craycraft. That's why it's called Jacob's Cave. And when he found the cave, he didn't actually come in through this entrance. This entrance wasn't opened up until 1950. He actually came into an entrance that was down at the end. You know, that long building you saw as you passed in?
Mm-hmm.
That's actually the original entrance.
Okay.
And he was in the area mining for lead and tiff from Kentucky. And the story goes that he found some small animals scurrying out of a hole. Being the curious little creature he was, he dug in and actually found the cave opening. Now when he came in, he actually had to pass through all of the passageways that are behind these walls. And I can tell you the clay around this area is some pretty sticky clay. So he didn't have the easy passageway in. He was pretty covered in it. You'll notice these two reflection pools. They're kind of a tricky little thing. How deep do you think they are all the way across, way back there?
Mm-hmm.
Pull over here and take a look at it. It too is only 2 inches deep, but it has this mystifying drop-off. And actually what that is another room on the other side of this wall with the light turned on. And that's why it looks like a drop-off over there. This week the water is actually running through to the other side of the room and running through the other parts of the cave.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that. Now right here we do have our first big formations. The first 2 large formations. They're all the way through the cave. They tell me this cave's 46 million years old and that 6 different ice ages actually washed through the cave to make this cave. Starting here with our first stalactite and down here with our first stalagmite. Now, this entrance, like I said, was opened up in 1950 and the concrete was put in there too. But they know by the way the ceiling is and the way the water flowed, they know that this actually was an opening at one time, but they think that it had collapsed during one of those ice ages. Now we're going to go around the corner here and actually see where Jacob Craig. Over here's where Jacob actually came into the cave. And until 1950, from like 1932 to 1950, people actually paid and came in through this entrance.
Cool.
We have Boy Scouts that come down on the weekends. And part of their tour is they get to go through the cave and then they get a geology speech and then they actually get to go through these passageways over here, and they usually get all this gear on and they've got gloves and stuff to keep the mud off of them, but they come out so covered in mud it's just, if I was their mom I'd be going, oh. But they actually do travel back there during their cave tour here at the cave. In this case we have several different bones, starting here with the mammoth teeth. These mammoth teeth kind of just prove the point of the 6 different ice ages. They were found in the cave. These little bones here are turtle bones. The Indian artifacts were not found within the cave, but they were found on the property.
Mm-hmm.
These 2 big pieces of rock here are hammers. These 3 pieces here were explained to me to be a game, and then the knife blade and then the arrowhead. Now bears were known to come into the cave after the opening was made bigger in 1875, so I do have a place over here where the bears did come in and hibernate. Mm-hmm. We have some of their teeth right here. Now all of these other teeth that are on this side are from the Peccary wild pig. It was explained to me that pig's been long since extinct, but these bones and teeth were found here in these back passageways here. Some people that go back there still find some of those bones. Mm-hmm. So these here were all found inside the cave too. The Peccary wild pig, but I don't think we have real live, bears anymore. Now the poor salamanders that live within the cave, the little ones are brownish black little guys, and then the adults are orange with brown spots. Mm-hmm. Now they're hard to spot in the cave anyway because everything in the cave is orange and brown. So with all this water that's washed through, they've kind of been washed out and So they may be really hard for us to spot. They're one of my favorite things in the cave is the wildlife. Not that
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of different things, but the salamanders are always fun. Now this area here, they say that Jacob was a religious man. Here we have Jacob's altar. And that he was kind of a fire and brimstone kind of preacher. Here we have his brimstone. And every once in a while he'd get quiet in here, so they brought in this baby grand piano. The only problem with that piano is it only plays hard rock.
Yeah.
Now actually what this really is above our head here, we can walk over and take a look up. This here, they tell me, is petrified coral reef. And that during one of those ice ages, the Midwest was covered by an ocean called the Silurian Sea. And this here just kind of proves that fact, because they say this is petrified coral reef.
Hmm.
So. You'll also notice we have a lot of writing throughout the cave. It's against the law to do that now, but back when they first found it, and people since have written their names, it's now a $500 to $5,000 fine if they get caught writing on a cave wall. But you can see D.W. Lennon was here October 19th, 1924. You see some have written in lead, some have written in charcoal. Those that are written in charcoal are actually look like smush. You can't really read what they say. And then as we come around, you'll notice people have actually carved their names in here too. Bob Christian, just several. We have some up here that are kind of funny. Johnny Whittle was here in 39 and back in 49. He's carved his name up here. And then my favorite is kind of funny. It says Vide or Phono, and then it turns into smush, and then over here it says phonographs at CD Hunters. Now that was probably back in the 20s also. But you can see writing all along in here, up here. We have a gentleman that Oxide. Now it's turned a little green. The reason it's green is because we do light the cave to show it off. And we have algae growing on a lot of our formations, moss growing on others. But that's just part of having a commercial cave. Now this gray to black here is another mineral called manganese. It was thought to have been soot or dirt, but if it was soot from the lanterns or the torches, it would be either up here or on the underside, not on the outside. So they went in and explored further, and they discovered that's the mineral manganese. Now this orange here, which you'll see a lot of in this cave, it's iron oxide, otherwise known as rust. You say this is a rusty old cave, but you'll see a lot of that closed down. And this one's only about 53 years old, so it's quite young in the eye. If you want, you can actually touch that, but I do ask that you not touch any of our formations.
Sure.
But since it's on the sidewalk, you can touch what tomorrow and Saturday are going to be like. So we're going to go around the corner now, and we're actually going to see some cave bacon. Found a little salamander. He's going to run if I don't turn the light off on him. The little guy right there. He's just a tiny little guy. He's gonna say, yeah, turn off the light. But yeah, they're hard to spot for that very reason. And here's that cave bacon I was telling you about. It actually forms down the wall, so it forms a lot differently than the others. That's why it looks like it. And it's not just the ribbon. I've got a place over here where I'm going to show you just the wall of calcite that it actually glows in. It's kind of cool.
Wow.
Right here is where they tell me I could show you 6 different ice ages, so I just need you to come over and actually look up and see what we've got. It's kind of, I'm not sure that I'm not the scientist, but this is what they tell me. They say that as each ice age washed through, a layer of clay washed out. And that's why you see these flat areas. So we have 1, 2, 3. This level being number 4. The level that's even with my shoulders on each side is number 5, and number 6 is this one right here. So I'm like I said, I'm not the scientist in this, but that's how they explain it to me, is that's how they can tell 6 different ice ages. It actually glows, the light goes right in it. I just think that's so cool. The kids always have a blast with this one.
Yeah.
But yep, that's the really cool thing about calcite. I think it'd make great lampshades. Cut it into, yeah. Now this is the lowest point in which you'll be walking, so please watch your head. This room's known as the alligator room. And if you look behind there up on the ceiling, see his eye and his teeth. Now, the story goes, we went in. So it's a half a mile out, so it's a mile round trip. This is just a little tidbit of fun. Right here you'll see some prints from a dog. When Frank bought the cave in 1965, his family and the dog all came in. Dog was sitting right about here. One of the kids walks by, gooses the dog jumps across, and these are his footprints. Now that was 39 years. They think it might be manganese, that same mineral, but the cave owner seems to think it's just algae, but it's awfully dark, and we actually haven't gotten up there to actually touch it yet. We just discovered it a week or 2 ago, and that's our black stalactite.
That's cool.
Her eye, her trunk, and her tusk. Now she's been in here a long time, so she's got herself a runny nose. She's got herself a cold. We have another one over here. This one's actually my favorite of the two. This one right here. You can see that the formation formed on top of the clay, then the clay washed out.
Uh-huh.
When we were looking up in that room and seeing the 6 different ice ages, this is kind of what you were seeing from the underside. Still growing. And I'm sure you know what these are down here. They're kind of our little funny ha-ha in the cave. The bird that actually belongs to this funny looking nest actually lives right up here. That's our cave dove up there. Now she's not ignoring us. There's a reason she's turned her back. If you look back over here, you'll see this one-eyed hoot owl that just keeps on staring at her. So she's turned her back. But that's the one-eyed hoot owl. Now we don't have one elephant, we have 2. Here's our baby elephant right here. And we also have some bear claw marks right above that, up on the wall right up here. We've got claw marks and a slide. And then there's a slide over here, and then we'll have to go down a little ways, and I'll show you the paw print in my hand. But they're right here. Just a little bit smaller than my hand right there. You can see the slide here, and the claw marks up there.
Uh-huh.
So, oops, dark for us. Could you imagine being a bear getting stuck in here? Now in 1950, this room was the end of the tour, but they knew there was more cave back here. The only way through was actually on your belly through a stream. They knew, but nobody was going to pay to go on your belly in a 52-degree cave, so they actually had to cut and blast this out. When they did so, this hole right here opened up and water flowed out. Poor cave owner thought, oh my goodness, I flooded my cave. When all the water stopped flowing, they actually had this formation. Now this formation is still an active formation. They used to call it Snow White's bows, but with oxidation in 50 years, it's actually turned a pinkish purple hue. So now we just call it the world's largest geode. It's just this formation inside of the rock. You can come up here and take a look. It's just gorgeous. But you can see it's still active, and you can see where it's still white at in there. But it's just an absolutely amazing formation. You know, tight bulbs, but it actually filled up with water until it finally touched the filament. Like I said earlier, watching him, you hear me say that a lot. Now we do have to remind people to watch their head. That one's called headache rock. We even have our tour guides who don't pay attention and hit that one a lot. Now this room is known as the vegetable garden. It's the only garden I don't have to weed or water, so I'm happy. When I'm not working in the cave, I work outside too, so one of my jobs is to weed and water. Here we have our carrots, our broccoli, our cauliflower, our chili peppers, our corn on the cob. The one above you on the ceiling there is called the pumpkin. Now a lot of people like to think that's more of a pecan behind it. And this one here being an English walnut instead of a pumpkin. Some people call it the pumpkin, some people call it a walnut. This here is just some example of the clay. Now a lot of people want to take this clay out, and it's soft and supple. It's like the sweetest clay you've ever seen. A lot of people want to take it out and use it for pottery. My son being one of those. He says, just take a bowlful, Mom, just a bowlful. I keep telling him, no, I can't bring anything out of the cave. It's against the law.
Yeah.
But this clay is wanted by a lot. Whoops, light switch. Along this passageway, you can see how the water actually forced its way through here. You can actually see the rocks are smoother. We were just through that area where they actually blasted and cut. And the rocks are ragged, but through here they're really smooth. And what it reminds me of is in the old westerns, you know, John Wayne, those kind of old westerns. Don't they look like the rocks where they, you know, out in the desert with the Indians and everything?
Yeah.
I just think they're so cool. And here we have Jacob's ghost. That's what we call that formation. Something kind of unique here. And nobody's been able to give me a sufficient answer yet. I've asked. If you look, you'll see a couple of the stalactites, the soda straws, actually coming out, but they kind of come out at an angle. Like, look at this guy. He kind of goes. You can see this one kind of goes at an angle this way.
Yeah.
And then if you come over on this side, you'll see a whole bunch more. I don't understand why, you know, see that one, he just kind of goes that way. This guy's going this way. And there's no explanation. Most of them just come straight down and kind of, like that one, kind of goes this way. I don't understand it. It's something that a lot of people ask me, and I don't have an answer for it, and nobody's been able to give me a good answer for that. It's one of those mysteries. It must be the fact that we have a ghost over there. Now this is called the Children's Zoo, and all of these formations are from different parts of the caves. You notice the rounder ones, those are stalagmites, those come off the ground. This one here is Snow White, and there's 7 dwarfs. This one here is more pointed, this is a stalactite, and we call that one the bushy-tailed squirrel, or Rocky the Flying Squirrel. This one over here is a stalagmite. This one here we call Peter Rabbit. You see, kind of looks like a rabbit there. And this one here is also another stalagmite. This one here is called the Smokey the Bear and his woodland friends there. And I'm not sure why, but these 2 stalagmites over here are called Ronald McDonald and his dinner bell. So I'm not sure why he's in the children's zoo, but he's here. That all of this is a limestone base, but parts of it are dolomite. It's 100 times denser than concrete, So the water doesn't make its way through this area. It may make it to the sides, like the formations on the sides, but it doesn't make it through the ceiling. Whereas just a few feet behind us, it's just the limestone and the water has seeped through, and you can see all the formations just dripping out of the ceiling, and then we'll go for, I don't know, 50 more feet, and it'll come back to having a leaky ceiling again. But the ceiling changes like this throughout the cave, and I just think it's really cool. They tell me this is still some more of that petrified coral reef, and you'll see that through this part here quite often. It's not in big mass quantity amounts like the other part with the front of the cave, but you'll see it throughout this part here. Earthquakes have actually hit this cave, 2 of them millions of years ago. One of them back in 1811. It was the New Madrid Fault that shook, I think it's in southeastern Missouri, and that earthquake was about an 8.3, that there were 3 big shakes, one in December, January, and February, that there were over 200 aftershocks, and that this is just some of that earthquake damage. They also tell me that it made the Mississippi River run backwards, and that it actually rang the Liberty Bell in Pennsylvania. So that was quite a big earthquake. If it could break a rock in 2, you know, it had to be pretty big. Now this here is called a canopy. It's different than the stalagmites. It's actually coming off of the side of a formation. But you can see where it formed over the clay, and the clay actually washed away. Now we call this the whale's tail, and we also call it the eagle's wing. And the reason we call it the eagle's wing is underneath here you'll see that this actually looks like feathers in the formation. So that's why we call it the eagle's wing. See that it's actually starting to deteriorate. We don't call it dead, but it is not active, it's dormant. If you look over here, you'll see several of the soda straws and stalactites coming down that are active again. So you just never know when one's going to start, one's going to stop. So we do have activity on this side, so this side could definitely do more, whereas this side is now dormant, but it's still a massive formation. It kind of reminds me of a cake, in, you know, a tiered cake. Now this area here is known as the soda straw room. Basically, soda straws come from a drop of water. You can see those drops on the ceiling here. They're just baby stalactites. You can see that as the water starts to drip, the mineral starts to form around those drops of water, and they actually are hollow. But they do grow bigger. They grow bigger. We get the friends to meet them from the bottom. So we have stalactites, stalagmites. Finally, they meet, and over here you can see one that is met, and you have a column. Now this column's not going to get any taller, but he will get fluffier. Now right behind it you'll see a massive formation. This is actually about, I'd say 6 to 7 different columns that have actually grown together. That this is several columns that have actually grown bigger and bigger and bigger. They tell me that these cracks here are actually earthquake damage from millions of years ago. Now this one's awfully green only because we light it to show you this. But you can see those cracks, and you can see them around the back also. You can see how massive this is as we go around to the other side. Now if you look right between there, see right? Oh, you're going to step back. See that white stalactite over there?
Oh, wow.
Isn't that pretty? This is a pretty one. When we get around the corner, you won't be able to see him too well, but that's the best place to see him. This is one of the reasons we ask people not to touch, so you can see they're dirty.
Yeah.
Now, years ago, some knucklehead actually used their flashlights, and that's why you see so many of them broken. But I have to let me get my balance because I'm short and I can't reach them. This is kind of what they sound like. This one over here, he's kind of got a sense of humor. And here's the old stalagmite, nothing going on there. He's just the thump. White stalactite, actually, he's not the main character in this room. It's this one right here. He's called the Spitting Hillbilly. You can see that white stalactite is actually causing all of the commotion, but this guy's actually receiving it. We call him the Spitting Hillbilly because he drips down with such a rate that it out the Ozarks without saying a hillbilly.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, that was something that was still really big. A lot of them like to get away from that hillbilly persona that was so big in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And we still have that hillbilly here. And, well, we have eggs to go with that bacon I showed you earlier. Here's sunny side up. Here's scrambled. Now this room's known as the tobacco room, and the story goes is when they harvest tobacco from the fields, they actually have to hang it up and dry it before it can be sold off. So they tell me this looks like tobacco hanging in the barns. I don't know. That's what I've been told. Now this room is also known for its cactuses that grow in here. So we have the Cactus Garden. This one's jokingly called Jacob's hand. It kind of looks like a hand. Stone here and there, and so they used to call it the Devil's Graveyard. Well, about 45 years ago, a young man about the age of 14 got tired of calling it Devil's Graveyard. So he brought his own little character in one night after tours were over, and he's been here ever since. This little devil up there. You could say. Wash your hands. Talk to them about that later. Now this room is known as Sermon on the Mountain. You can see that sermon going on up there. We also have two different places where earthquake damage has happened. Right over here, you can see this one. They think this one's from 1811. See that it still hasn't healed itself. And right here with the one-eyed snapping turtle, this is a stalactite. They think this is from millions of years ago because this stalactite used to be up here. You can see that this formation formed on top of the stalactite. Now here we also have the howling coyote, and right there we have a little spool doll. Your guys actually put that up. That is just clay, but it looks like Saint Nick. But he kind of looks like he belongs here, doesn't he?
Yeah.
All right. We'll go around the corner here. Watch your head and shoulders. You may still hear the waterfall in the back. We're almost to the back. Now this room's known as the Stalagtite room. Now stalactites, you can see there are a ton more soda straws in here, but stalactites kind of cover over the outsides. They might look like little roots here and there on the big ones. Now my favorite ones are right over here. And there are these little bubbles that come right out of the ceiling, and then the soda straws come out of those. Now over here you can see on the ceiling all these other little white bubbles. I think they look like little mushrooms popping out of the ceiling. Now that one, he's kind of a joke. That's a stick figure gone wrong. They forgot to draw his arms and they made one leg longer than the other. Through the standing most of the rest of the way, you can see that it's up to here, and they actually cut and blast this out. The only way through was actually on your hands and knees in a very small space.
Yeah.
So they actually had to cut quite a bit out, so watch your head and shoulders. Watch your head there. Oh yay, we can actually hear the waterfall. This water does come from the outside, so it does have a fall area that it normally is just a tiny little trickle when there's not a lot of rain, but when there's a lot of rain, it just flows through here like crazy. But you can actually hear the waterfall today. Now, this room, you can see they actually had to do a lot of cutting because we're actually looking above all of this. The best way to look in here is actually... Now, they probably won't ever make this any bigger because they'd have to do a lot of damage to stuff back here. And about a half a mile in and a half a mile out is about the best that most people can do. Most normal people. Even this is all wheelchair and stroller accessible, so we do bring in people of all ages into the cave. Now, from this point where we're at in this room, we're actually 50 feet from the surface. Now, we're deeper in other parts. But finally, everybody's always asking, well, how do you know it's 50 feet? Well, I finally asked, I said, well, how do you know, to the boss? And he says, the same thing that they use in the airplanes, an odometer, is what they use down below ground.
Right.
And that's how they know we're 50 feet.
Yeah.
So, and this room's also got a lot of earthquake damage. You see right there? Some of that earthquake damage. Now to your left there, you'll see some more right over here. And you can see there's a big pile of clay there, right here. Now all of this clay and all of this concrete was all taken out by and then brought back in by a wheelbarrow. So I'm pretty certain by the time they got to this half-mile mark, they were pretty tired of carrying all this clay out. So a lot of it got left behind there. And this big pile that's kind of here, kind of goes back. You'll notice big rocks and debris. They kind of piled it to the side. And they actually banked this so that the stream wouldn't run under our feet. It actually stayed. A drop of water that lives in between, and Frank, the cave owner, tells me it's been this way since he bought the cave. That this stalactite and stalagmite have not made a column yet, but this is the closest you'll see to a column being made. There's just a little tiny drop of water in between. That's one of my favorites in the whole cave, is this opening into here. I showed you the stalactite room that really doesn't show any cool ones, but if you look up in this little pocket here, you see all of these little stalactites growing. They look like little roots and little mazes going here and there. And in this little part here, you can see soda straws that have actually made a column. Now, soda straws have water in them. They're hollow, they have water in them. So what happens after they make a column? Well, that water actually starts pushing its way out of the sides of the wall, and then actually they start getting fatter that way. You see all the little stalactites that are formed on the outside. Now this little room up here has tons more of those stalactites. You know, on your computer, on the screensaver, have you ever seen the pipes? This keeps building pipes. That's kind of what this little room here looks like. Now these two are my favorite stalactites. If you look straight up right here, you will notice one that kind of looks like a jellyfish.
Yeah.
And then the one that, well, people called it the spider. But when I was growing up, the space station went up into the sky. And so that one kind of reminds me of a space station. But those are my two favorite in the whole cave. Now they tell me this one here is the cave kitty. See the little face right up here? And the little body and the tail. But that's what they call that one, the cave kitty. And if you look back there, you'll see another stalactite. It kind of looks like a spider. I've actually changed this one. I call it Little Miss Muffet and the spider who sat down beside her. over there a little ways and see if I can get the light to come on. Travel, I like it.
Yeah.
We have, yep, the light came on. We have another flashlight, which I didn't bring because it's a heavy old beast, but it emits an LED blue light, and it's always fun to travel, and I can usually travel without any lights and just travel through the cave with that.
Yeah.
My son gets scared, so he doesn't like to come in with me. Shoulders there. Now this little room, I don't know much about it, but it formed in much the same way as that other room, the one with the pretty geode looking thing in it. You can see that it actually had a crust that covered across. And when they opened it up, water had been in there, but it hasn't been in there in a very long time. The only thing funny or cool is right up there. They sometimes call that formation right up there. It's kind of hard to see into. The anchor.
Okay.
Kind of looks like an anchor. And it kind of goes up and around, but there's nothing up there, just a big old hole up there. You can touch the water if you like. We call it elephant smell. And if you look right up here, we call this one Lover's Ledge. This is something you don't see on the way in. You can see the wine bottle, the glass, and then obviously you need a bottle of aspirin for the next morning. Feel like you've almost walked a whole mile?
Pardon?
I said, does it feel like you've walked almost a whole mile?
No.
Not one bit. I normally am in here in just shorts and a t-shirt,
Uh-huh.
so I usually don't even wear a jacket. I stay pretty nice and level and cool. The funny thing is I've lost 10 pounds in 3 months. And I get on exercise and get anywhere from 2, during the busy season, 2 to 6 miles a day walking back and forth.
Uh-huh.
So, it's the only job I've ever worked at I don't break a sweat at. Now, looking right up there on the ceiling, you will see a few shadows. You can see our bear, right there, our fish, our hummingbird, and right over there we call that one the Indian. Come around the corner here, you'll see a reflection on your left-hand side. And if you look in there, you'll see a castle. Going around the corner here, we've got one I'm going to show you. It's called the black light display. And it's kind of cool. It's rocks and minerals from all over the United States and world,
Uh-huh.
and they fluoresce in the black light.